And welcome to another episode of In Stereo with Mike and Rick. I'm Mike Bovaird.
And I'm Rick Miller.
And we're talking all things audio. Welcome. Our special guest today is Jeff Fritz. Jeff, welcome.
Thank you guys, Mike, Rick. I really appreciate you having me on today.
No problem at all. Jeff, many people out there will know you as the individual from Soundstage, penning hundreds of reviews over the last 24 years. And you kind of shocked people out there about a week ago, back on May 1st, when you sent out a note stating that you were leaving Soundstage after more than 20 years. And you kind of left it open for a day or so before you announced that you were joining Magico. So tell us a little bit about how difficult of a decision that was after 24 years to leave Soundstage, a familiar, sort of position you were in, and do something completely different on the other side of the desk in the industry.
Yeah, so I think the first thing that I would say is I had an amazing career as an audio reviewer. I absolutely loved almost every moment of it. It was incredibly educational, but beyond that, audio and music have been my passion. So it was something that I really embraced and loved, and I got to experience, just amazing products, amazing people, got to go to a lot of different places. And so it was fantastic. And so, yeah, leaving that position after 24 years was a big deal. But I can tell you, Soundstage is going to be 100% fine. I actually got an opportunity to train my replacement, so to speak, before I left. And, those guys are very well positioned, and they're gonna continue to do great things. So I really wasn't worried about it in that sense. But the transition to Magico is interesting because, through the years, having reviewed literally hundreds of loudspeakers, Magico really had an impact on me. And I'm talking about the actual loudspeakers.
Right.
And it became, just point blank, it became my favorite loudspeaker brand. And so, over the years, I covered Magico at shows. I reviewed Magico loudspeakers. It was my personal preference, although professionally, I had to remain as objective as possible, which is, not quite possible for anyone.
Right.
Everybody's going to have their biases. Mm-hmm. And I did. I had a love for Magico speakers back since, honestly, 2009, when the M5 was released at CES. And so when the opportunity arose, it was something that I just, to be honest, did I give it months and months of thought? No, I didn't. It's something that I really embraced rather quickly, mm-hmm. and I was ready to dive in. And the transition, it was actually pretty quick. And I've been thrilled for the last 2 weeks with the work I'm doing there.
You and Doug have been friends for a very, very long time. Doug Schneider, of course, from Soundstage. And how difficult of a conversation was that with Doug when you had finally made a decision to make a change?
Well, I got to say, Doug is a pro, and he's been doing this a long time. And he was very cordial in the conversation. There were no issues, and really, to be honest, it gravitated very quickly to, how are we going to make this transition? I gave a full 6 weeks of notice, and I was able to really kind of help with that transition and kind of smooth it. And so, Doug he's very motivated to push Soundstage forward. And so we really just, to be honest, we jumped right into how can we make this work for Soundstage, and that's what I spent that 6 weeks doing. And I got to say, they haven't skipped a beat. I don't expect them to skip a beat.
Yeah.
And so it was really a lot easier than you would think.
Yeah. No, Doug's a real professional, so no surprise that it didn't really cause any flapping about of problems and challenges. He probably had a plan within 5 minutes and was ready to go.
Right.
Let me ask you a little bit about your past 24 years of reviewing. What are some of the challenges as a reviewer that you face that people in the audience they don't know about because they've never been a reviewer? So, what are some of the things that you encounter, on a regular basis reviewing?
Well, for me, I think it was a little bit different than a lot of guys. Certainly not unique in the industry. There are a number of other people that cover the same types of products that I did. But when you get a set of Bluetooth loudspeakers in, typically it's not a big deal to get those products set up and working, hopefully.
Hmm.
But I reviewed, super expensive, just the kind of the edge of the art products, and those products tend to be very heavy and large. So the biggest challenges that I had, honestly, were just the physical logistics of getting things into my room. There was one time, in fact, I'll tell you two stories. One, I had a very large loudspeaker that had to go up into my upstairs listening room. This is in my prior home,
Hmm.
and the stairs going into that room took a sharp left-hand turn. There was a landing, and when I got the speakers kind of staged and ready to go upstairs with the help of a few people, it was obvious that the speakers, this might sound like a rookie mistake, but the speakers were too deep to make the turn on the
Hmm.
landing.
Hmm.
And so I ended up, I actually had a friend with me who was a general contractor. And he just looked at me and he said, Jeff, we can take this wall out right here and they can go right up the chute. It's not going to be a problem. Now, this wall it was in my dining room.
Uh-huh.
So, I had to get on the phone with my wife and bless her heart. I said, Andrea, I said, listen, when you get home this afternoon, you're going to see some things in our house. Just know that it's going to be put back.
Uh-huh.
It's going to be fixed
Uh-huh.
like it was never there. But when you get home, you're going to see some things you're not going to like. And, I just ask for your patience.
So you didn't have to say to her, honey, next summer, how about we go to Paris? You didn't have to butter her up ahead of time?
Yeah, no, I think she was pretty used to kind of
Okay.
the extreme nature of the hobby at that point. But the second one was even worse, the second story, or even more difficult of a challenge. And that was during my one of my world's best audio system events.
Hmm.
I had the Magico Q7s coming in. And for those not familiar with that loudspeaker, it's 750 pounds out of the crate, but the only way to transport it is in the crate. So you're
Hmm.
looking at about 1,000 pounds. And so it was physically impossible to get enough people on the stairs to lift that crate and carry it up. So it had to go up another way. So I had a friend, actually my next door neighbor, he was an ex IBM engineer and he was also a general contractor.
Right.
And I said, Tom, I said, look, I said, we've got to figure something out here. Let's put our heads together and come up with something. And so he basically devised a trap door in the bottom, in the floor of my listening room, which it was a room over the garage. So you had the entire garage underneath.
Hmm.
And to make a long story short, it was a platform that could be removed with a forklift.
Hmm.
The forklift would lower the platform. The products, in this case, a pair of Q7s, would be placed on top of the platform. The forklift would raise them up. The floor would be secured back in place. And voila, the speakers were in the listening room.
Oh
And
my
so when I
God.
had absolutely massive products come in, I
Right.
would rent a forklift for a weekend
Hmm.
and they would go up nice and easy. And yeah, so, those were the types of challenges, just the logistics issues,
Right.
I think, most people probably wouldn't consider, they wouldn't consider those types of things, when they read the review. But gosh, it was, yeah, that could be a challenge
You
for
might be
sure.
the only person I know that has an escape hatch in their listening room. That's pretty
For sure.
impressive. That's pretty impressive. You and I have known each other for a very long time, and as long as I've known you, you've always been a digital guy. I don't recall you ever having a turntable or a reel-to-reel deck or being into analog. Have you always been a digital guy?
I have. I think I'm very minimalist by nature, so I've always been a one source audiophile, and even beyond that, even though I've listened to quite a few preamplifiers in my day and reviewed quite a few, in my personal system, it's usually a digital to analog converter with a built-in volume control,
Hmm.
driving either a stereo amplifier or a pair of mono blocks directly.
Hmm.
And that's one of the reasons, right now I have an MSB technology discrete DAC,
Hmm.
and it drives power amplifiers beautifully. And so it's a very minimalist system. And yeah, I have nothing against vinyl. I think it's fantastic. It's certainly propelled the industry forward. I think it's been great for manufacturers. It's been great for young people coming into the hobby.
Hmm.
But yeah, personally, I've been a digital guy since the beginning.
That's very cool, and I know you've got sort of a unique combination with your MSB DAC, the MSB discrete with the Premier Power Base, because people call us, we're MSB dealers, and people call us and they say, "I want the Jeff Fritz configuration." So you've done something unique that's out there in the market that people are aware of, and that is a great combination, the Premier Power Base with the discrete. It's very, very good.
Yeah, it's been great. When people see photos, they think it's a Premier DAC,
Hmm.
but it is. It's a discrete with the Premier power base, and yeah, it's actually a configuration that Vince at MSB recommended to me at the time, and yeah, it's been fantastic.
Have you gone down the rabbit hole of audiophile switches and network cables and things like that?
I've not,
Oh
I've
boy.
not, and I think
Okay.
the reason for that, for me, it's really just kind of a bandwidth thing. I
Okay.
would rather spend my time and my resources reviewing. I really like reviewing speakers more than anything else. Back
Hmm.
when I was a reviewer, that was kind of my favorite product because, and you would think I would say this being with Magico, but it's something that I've always espoused, and that is the speaker is the largest determinant of sound quality in a system. Not that everything else isn't important. I do believe that everything matters, but the speaker matters the most, and that's always been my experience. And so, when faced with, okay, what am I going to review next? Knowing, okay, maybe I review 10 products in a year, something like that, it would usually go to a loudspeaker, maybe, a power amplifier, maybe a source after that in
Right.
that order.
Well, that's a good segue into the reason why we're here today, and that is to talk about your new role at Magico, which when I saw the announcement, first thing I thought of is how forward thinking this was of Magico and how important this is in today's world to have somebody like yourself come on and be the brand ambassador, digital marketing, all of the things that you're going to be doing, and I'll have you talk about it rather than me. But it is so important, and I do want to get out there for clarification because my phone did ring off the wall after your announcement. People were wondering where Peter McKay was going, and Peter McKay is not going anywhere. He's as busy as ever in his role at Magico. So you're augmenting, I think, some of the things that Peter and Alone were doing, and you're taking some of those things and just branching out.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Peter and Alone and Dave, all the guys at Magico, they've been absolutely fantastic. I have to tell you, they welcomed me in day one. I was in Hayward, California at the factory on May 1st. They had an office set up for me. They just rolled out the red carpet and really kind of, I guess they have invested in me and
Mm-hmm.
really, I can already tell that they're going to help me be successful. And Peter definitely is a big part of that. So
Yeah.
yeah, the position is new at Magico,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I think it's my goal honestly is to expand brand awareness, to really promote the brand. It's all about brand building for me with Magico, and honestly, it's easy because first of all, I love Magico. I love the speakers. So it's a natural thing for you to promote something that you're very passionate about. And I'm passionate about Magico loudspeakers for sure. It's something that I love to talk about. And
Mm-hmm.
there's frankly a lot to talk about. When the 2 days that I was at the factory, and I'd been to the factory a couple times before, but this time I really got to do a deep dive into what Magico is doing today. And if
Mm-hmm.
if you saw Magico 5 years ago versus what they're doing today, they're they push forward in a multitude of ways. And man, just being in that factory and seeing the R&D, the materials, just
Mhm.
everything that they're doing, it's the testing, the quality control. I mean, it can't help but sell you. So,
Absolutely.
for me, doing content around that
Hmm.
is the easiest thing. It's going to be pretty neat, pretty easy. I'm not going to have to pull things out of a hat. It's all right there in plain sight.
You're going to be going into the marketing realm more on the digital side, and you're going to be talking about how Magico is different from other loudspeakers. Maybe you can talk to a few points about how you envision communicating that to people and what those points are.
Yeah, so these days, it's different than it was being an audiophile. When I started out, there were print magazines, and that was it. And those were the channels of information. That's where you gathered, your shopping list, so on and so forth. And today, obviously, it's much different. With social media and all the forms of marketing and communication, and just the way that consumers bring in information. Right, it's so varied.
Hmm.
And so, really, my job at Magico is to use as many of those channels as possible to get the word out about, the brand, the loudspeakers, everything that we're doing
Hmm.
at Magico. So, that could look like a lot of different things, and it could actually change over time as we have new trends, in the way that people consume information. As far as Magico, though, the way that Magico has changed is and I actually, the first time I was at Magico was at their old factory, and then the second time was in 2021 when I was there for the launch of the M9,
Hmm.
and then I was just there a couple of weeks ago, and so I've been able to see the progression, and really, Magico has advanced in so many ways, just in the way they build loudspeakers, right? So, I could talk about the Klippel near field scanner, which is an amazing device. If you've ever seen a Klippel measure a loudspeaker, it measures it in 360 degrees. Even the M9 was measured that way with the help of a massive crane to lift
Hmm.
the 1,000-pound M9.
Wow.
They also have, and these are separate machines. They have a Klippel QC suite to ensure that drivers and finished loudspeakers are acoustically tested.
Hmm.
And that's something that I think differentiates Magico from quite a few boutique manufacturers. Actually, they test the final completed loudspeaker acoustically,
Hmm.
and you would be surprised how different that is than the way a lot of boutique manufacturers operate. And just the multitude of things. They have a Polytech laser vibrometer, one of the most it's probably, in terms of addressing cabinet resonance
Hmm.
and designing a cabinet, this is really the state of the art. It's not it's there's no guessing game. They know exactly how these enclosures, their bracing system, their damping, all of this is operating as a system and can be tested very comprehensively by these tools. So I think at Magico, it's you know the R&D is very advanced,
Hmm.
but then I can't leave out one other aspect that is just as critical. Magico has a brand new, as of this past year, listening room
Yes.
that was
Yep.
redesigned from the ground up to
Yep.
be, an absolute perfect test bed
Hmm.
for listening to loudspeakers. And so, you have all this R&D, all this science, right, behind the scenes, but it's still got to translate into the listening experience.
Yeah.
And Magico has the listening room to really let the team know exactly what a speaker is doing sonically. And so
Yeah.
when you put all that together, it's really just soup to nuts, a very comprehensive process to design and manufacture. And I haven't even gotten into the manufacturing, but that's just as impressive. But
Yeah.
when you get a Magico loudspeaker, man, I just got to tell you, you're there's no there's no stone left unturned when it comes to designing that product.
Absolutely true. You know, like I've always said, when you look at a Magico speaker and you look at the inside and you look at the crossover, which I'd like you to talk a little bit about, there's no doubt you know where your money is going. There's no doubt. So it is it is fantastic, and I know the Magico crossovers are quite robust. Do you want to talk a little bit about those?
Yeah, I think one thing I would recommend that people do, and I think you guys probably have some images you're going to show, but Google search it.
Yeah.
Look at the Magico website and look
Hmm.
at a completed Magico crossover, even from the A series, for instance, and then look at crossovers from other manufacturers. There's a ton of investment
Right.
put into the crossover components. Most of the crossover components are Mundorf from Germany. In fact, I'm not sure when this video is going to come out, but if you look at there's a new photo on our social media of a pair of M3s, and
Hmm.
one pair is open to the back, so
Yeah.
you can see the crossover. It's the crossover sections in the back of the speaker. I would like everybody to look at that and
Right.
see just the robustness
Yeah.
of the Magico crossovers and what goes into them. So it's like you said earlier, Mike. You know where your money's going,
Yeah.
and that's not just on the outside of the speaker. It
Right.
is particularly evident on the inside.
Correct. Absolutely true. And you know, Magico, a lot of people don't know this, but they do more than just loudspeakers. So we have the new M rack that they've come out with, which is a, no holds barred, equipment rack. But one of the best kept secrets about Magico is the Q pods. Now, there's a lot of people out there running around trying to find the latest and greatest, isolation devices, and you've got your still points and your isoacoustics and your sort foot cones and your center stage footers, and a whole plethora of different brands of products. But one of the best ones we've ever tried is the sleeper in the industry, which is the Magico Q pods, and you can put those underneath your DAC, your CD player, your preamp, even your amplifiers. I mean, whatever the case might be. And the construction, the makeup of the Q pods, it just makes sense for dissipating resonances from devices. Maybe you can talk a little bit about the Q pod.
Yeah, so the Q pod is an interesting device. It uses a principle that is used in a number of high end products, but you don't necessarily always see it in footers, and that is constrained layer damping. And so the pods basically take resonance, they convert the resonance to heat in the substrate of the Q pod, and they drain it away from components. And there's measurable. I think there's actually some before and after measurements in the on the Magico website that you can check out, so you can see the scientific principle and how the measurable differences actually shake out. But I mean, you just said it. The best way to assess a product like that is put them under a component
Right.
and see what kind of difference it makes to the sound, to what you're actually hearing. And it's kind of striking when you hear it. But yeah, they're very, very effective. And then also, I mean, audiophiles like audiophile jewelry, right? And
Right.
I got to tell you, the pods they're just beautiful
They are.
devices.
They
They're
are.
really machined
Yes.
and polished to the nth degree. And yeah, it's kind of like having a Rolex under your
That's absolutely true.
under your component in a way. Yeah.
Absolutely true. Jeff, what is your new official title? Is it brand ambassador? What is the official title?
It is brand ambassador. Yes,
Okay.
that's exactly right. Yeah.
And how did this position come about? This isn't, they obviously don't advertise, for these types of positions everywhere. How did this position evolve, and how did things happen for you and Magico?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. And, throughout the 24 years and 8 months that I was a reviewer, I worked with tons and tons of PR people, from PR agencies to, the in-house staff at a lot of companies. And I really got to see kind of from the inside out the way that companies tried to brand build. And so, I had a lot of not firsthand experience, but I had a lot of opinions. And, of course, being a reviewer, we're never short of opinions, right? So
Right.
I was having a talk with a lone wolf, and he mentioned that, he might be hiring someone in a marketing type role. And I said, well, let me tell you what you want to look for, in my opinion, and let me tell you what you want to stay away from, in my opinion. And I just kind of gave him a rundown, and it was really a conglomeration of all the best people that I knew in PR through the years. And he was like, "Well, gosh, that's great. He really appreciated it." And the conversation just kind of
Yeah.
morphed from there. And
Yeah.
before you know it, I'm working at Magico.
There you go. He's pretty smooth. He's pretty smooth with these conversations. So that's good. And Jeff, how would you say, in your opinion, 24 years in the industry, how would you say that the industry has changed to, I don't want to say warrant or justify, but allow for the opportunity for a position like yours at Magico?
Well, that's so interesting, because I think it was way simpler back in the early days. I remember, it was kind of common knowledge that if they had the infrastructure, right, and they were prepared, and
Hmm.
then they got that big stereophile review, it could just absolutely launch a company.
Hmm.
And and if a company wasn't ready to ramp up manufacturing, it could also actually hurt a company. And there were some stories about that. But it really was a simpler time, and you had the print magazines, and you were looking for that glowing review. But now it's just the channels of information are so varied.
Hmm.
And I think companies are trying to navigate, how do we get our message out there when the consumer, not only are they shopping and they have all these brands, right, to
Hmm.
choose from, but they have all of these ways to consume information to choose from.
Right.
Are they looking at print magazines? Are they looking at web magazines? Are they looking at social media? Are they doing Google searches? Are they on TikTok? What are they doing? And
Right.
really the answer is kind of all of the above.
Yeah.
And so I think, for someone in a role like this today, you have to be flexible, and you've got to know that there's, I suspect, 2 years from now, my job might look a little different in the forms of communication that I'm using, because that's changing so fast. So I think flexibility, and you can't be tied to, well, this is the way we did it 5 years ago or 10 years ago, or necessarily even a year ago.
Hmm.
You got to be ready to turn on a dime and do something different. And I
Yeah.
think that's what companies really need.
That's very well said. Very well said. Um, we'll see you in Munich next week, I guess. You'll be there.
Oh yeah, oh
Yeah.
yeah,
You'll leave.
absolutely.
What
I
day you
can't
leaving?
wait. I'm gonna leave Monday.
Me too. Yeah.
And yeah, I love the high end show
Me
in
too.
Munich. I started at high end when it was in Frankfurt at the
Hmm.
Kempinski Hotel,
Right.
and that was at least 20 years ago, probably a little more than 20 years ago. So I've been going to high end for a long time. I'm really excited about it. We're going to have the S3 loudspeaker
Great.
at the Magico room.
Yeah.
I would invite everyone to come out and listen to the S3. I've got to tell you a quick story about the S3 too,
Sure.
if you
Sure.
got the time. So,
Yeah.
the S3, it's called an S3, right? And it
Right.
is a member of the S series.
Hmm.
But that loudspeaker, there was a little bit of discussion. This was before I was with Magico, and I had a talk with some of the folks at Magico, and I was like, with everything you guys are putting into this product, maybe it should be something different than an S.
Right.
I floated the idea, maybe it should be called the T3,
Right.
right? And
Right.
that probably was too close to a Terminator movie from years ago. But
Yeah.
uh, it's really more to me, and this is just my personal opinion. It's almost like an M speaker in an S series
Cabinet.
garb,
Yeah. Yeah.
in an aluminum garb.
Yeah.
And I think there's so much in this speaker, technology wise. I mean, the outgoing S3 was 170 pounds. This thing
Mhm.
is 222 pounds. That's because of the cabinet complexity. That's because of the motor systems and the drivers.
Yeah.
I mean, this thing is a different animal, and I think when people hear it, they're going to be a little confused. They're going to say, "Wow, this is way more than any S series speaker past," and
Yeah.
and that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, we're waiting on our pair. We ordered it in MCAST, like the no, not bronze, the dark gray. Yeah, the dark gray,
Yeah.
and I did get a call from Alon, and he did say that there was a black pair, but we wanted to get it's like a dark gray, so we're waiting on ours. But I did get to hear them at Expona, and yes, the sound is great. The bass is phenomenal. It's everything you would expect and more. But what I loved about it was the look, the compactness, if you will, the stoutness of the speaker. As you said, it's significantly more heavier, but the speaker visually, when I saw it, I said that's going to fit into a lot more rooms and be much more visually appealing to a lot more people than the outgoing S3 Mark II.
You're so right. It really is. It's going to fit into a lot of rooms. It's going to fit into a lot of decor. And I got to tell you this: there was Magico had a UK launch of the S3 just in the past couple of days, and in the room that they were in, Alone said they were getting bass extension to 26 hertz in room.
Yeah.
With that speaker. It is very substantial, and even though it's not going to dominate a room, when you play that speaker, man, you're gonna think you had something twice the size. It's really phenomenal. And I hope everyone.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Sorry, Jeff.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I hope everyone can come and for those that can attend the Munich high-end show. I know we're going to be in a fairly large room, so you're really going to be able to hear that speaker kind of open up and breathe and see what it can do. And I expect it's going to be phenomenal.
It's a great room. Do you know what the pairing electronics are going to be?
I do not.
Okay.
I do not know at this time.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've actually been to that store in London, KJ West 1, I think it's called. I went to that store last summer, and it's a very nice store. And you walk in, and then they've got a set of stairs at the back, and you walk down. I don't know if you've been to the store, but
Yeah.
they've got just a sea of speakers and stuff all on the left-hand side. But then they have a nice listening room in the back, and I actually went in there and listened to a few things, and they're a great group of guys. And at that time, they were having the heat wave in London. I don't know if you remember on the news, it was like 105 degrees or something in London. Nothing was working, definitely not the people, but the trains, everything had shut down because it was just so hot and nothing would work. So I went in there, and I don't think they didn't have air conditioning, and they were all dying in there. They had their fans, their little fans on their desks, and yeah, they were. There wasn't much getting done that day, I can tell you. But I did get a good look around their store, and it was very good. So,
yeah, I saw photos, and it looked great. And hey, I do want to mention to everyone too. We're going to have from Munich. If you're not able to attend, there's going to be constant updates on all the Magico social media by yours truly. And
Okay.
so I would invite everyone to kind of check in on that. Lots of photos and things of that nature. So
Excellent.
I'd love for everyone to have a look at that.
Well, I know I've done a lot of talking, and I know Rick has some questions.
Yeah, I do, and I've got something to help me here. I've got a little Magico that we're trying to build. We've gotten this far with it, and we're waiting
Where
on
can we
some
get those little
drivers to come in. Yeah,
what size drivers are those, Rick? 2
they're,
inch?
They're this big, Mike. And I just Magico sent us this, which is very nice of you.
We're waiting on the other one.
Yeah, with the other half of it and the other one.
That is a model of the S7, and it did come in its own little wooden crate, so it was pretty cool. But yes, Rick, go ahead. You had some questions?
Well, I was just going to say that some things about it that are a little different than some of the other brands is, in here you could see the extensive use of cross bracing through there. And I know from what Jeff told us and what I've seen on the websites, they don't just say, well, there's room here, we're going to put a brace in. I mean, this has to be thought out. If you would put a brace on the wrong place, you could actually make things worse and not better. So all this has been really scientifically determined at the Magico factory where all these braces go. The same thing with the cabinet. The shape of it is there for a reason. It looks nice, but there is an acoustical reason for that too. And also on the back of it, there's not a bunch of terminals. There's just going to be one set of terminals on here, which goes back into the crossover that we were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that, Jeff said we could look online and see pictures of the crossover. So, the engineers there, the factory, have determined that one set of terminals here is the best. And also you don't see any port anywhere on here. It's a solid sealed cabinet, mm-hmm. which has advantages too. It goes deeper in bass than a ported cabinet does, and you don't have to worry about port noise coming out of the port or getting it too close to the wall. If there was a port here, you got it too close to the wall, that could be a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of advantages to that. And they have these copper rings around here, which is what Mike was talking about for the vibration.
Yeah.
So that really helps too. So Jeff, looking at this, and from what I've said, is there anything you'd like to add to that? Because you've been to the factory and you've seen how they build this and how they engineer it.
Yeah, one of the things that, and you made some really good points, Rick, and I think I guess the main point here is you could take all of these different elements, right? The computer modeling, the acoustic testing, the laser vibrometer, all of these things, looking at the cabinet. And yes, you're right. It's a very, very advanced cabinet. It performs, tremendously. And that's really across the entire Magico range. But what I would say is probably even more important than that is that everything is looked at as a system. So it's really hard, and I kind of learned this as a reviewer, and it's really probably true of Magico more than any other speaker manufacturer I know. It's really hard to pinpoint, well, okay, you're getting this sound because of this reason.
Right.
Because the loudspeaker, it's really a comprehensive design. So, you've got in the S3, for instance, you've got the graphene-infused nanotech diaphragms, really, really pistonic operation from the diaphragms. Are you hearing that? Are you hearing the cabinet? Are you hearing the crossover? And really I think the answer to that is you're hearing a system. And
Yes.
That's where I think Magico probably more so than anything else, that's really where they shine, because they're able to, particularly with some of the really advanced computer modeling tools that they have, they're really able to consider the loudspeaker as a system and not just these individual parts that are fitting together. And how do these individual parts work? And that is looked at, but really it's how is the system at the end of the day, how's everything fitting together? And, they really have the tools to deal with that and to optimize every aspect of the design. And I think, that's really the takeaway that, when it comes to Magico design, when you're getting that speaker, there's everything to the nth degree has been looked at and refined and optimized. And, you can really be assured that you're getting something, completely engineered.
Yep.
Yeah, I believe it. It's a total system synergy is the way I like to think of it as. It's a synergy between all the drivers, the cabinet, the crossover, everything. And then you have to worry about the looks of it. You want it to look great. You want it to look as good as it sounds, which Magico has this kind of design of this curve in here. When the finish is on there, it's beautiful. So,
Mm-hmm.
In the shows that I've been to and then listening here at Suncoast Audio, I mean, Magico speakers have a sound that's, it's very fast, it's very revealing. I mean, it's almost like a laboratory tool. I mean, anything you feed it, it's going to give you. You don't lose any information in a Magico. So you want to make sure all your components upstream are in good shape, and we can help you with that here at Suncoast Audio, because this is going to provide you with everything. I mean, it's just like a fire hose. It just gives you such a volume of good information coming from your other components from Suncoast Audio.
Shameless
Mike, I do have a question for you, Mike, before we go. So you said that you have a pair of S3s on order.
Yes.
Give me your opinion, right?
Okay.
You're building a virtual system for a customer.
Uh-huh.
What is your ideal S3 system look like for a customer that walks in and says, I want an S3, build me a system around it.
That's a good one. We put them with a pair of vac amps, right, Rick?
Yes, yeah, we do that.
No, Rick and I have this tube versus solid state debate all the time. What would I put them with? I think that's a great question, and I really like the Past Labs products with Magico loudspeakers. The XA 60.8s, the 100.8s. I would actually say the 260.8 from Past with an XP22 would be a great combination. The 32 is a great preamp, but it's 3 chassis and it's starting to get, taking up a lot of shelf space for a lot of people. So I think the XP22, which does have the separate power supply, the 260.8s are monoblocks, 260 watts a channel, plenty of power. They have a kind of a sweetness and a warmness to the sound, and I think that would go great. That would be one combination. Mike, what do you think?
For a combination?
Yeah, with the new S3s.
I'd probably pick the same thing, to be honest with you. I would probably go with Pass or
the
maybe
other
Luxman or Boulder.
Well, that's the problem, is that there's so many good ones.
Constellation
Was the one I was just going to say.
That's why I said it, to help.
These are all brands that we carry. But...
Yeah, I mean, and if somebody wanted to do tubes, the VAC 200 IQ monos, I don't think I would do a single stereo. I think I would do the monos, or better yet, I would do the best looking amplifier ever designed in the world. Best looking is the new VAC Master 300. That's because I designed it. So that's why it's the best looking one.
It is very good looking.
If anyone remembers, it kind of had a plain look before. And I had a meeting with Kevin after the Capital Audio Fest, and I said, I love the amp, sounds great, but it doesn't look very good. And I didn't use the word very good. I said, it looks like something else. But anyway, so he said, well, here's a piece of paper. You draw it out. So I end up drawing exactly what you see today in the VAC Master with the glass. And of course, I'm sitting there and I'm saying, well, it's going to be a hard job to put the tubes in the front because now they're in the back. And he goes, no, we just turn around. It was like, no, it'll be 2 seconds and we'll turn around. So, and I was trying to explain to Kevin how the glass needed to sink in. It needed to have like a half turn, like sort of bevel inwards, and look like a sunken look, and then where exactly the lights went and the knobs, and exactly as I drew it out. He said, okay, leave it with me. And literally it was on a piece of paper, and he called me the next day and he said, come back, and he had it up on his CAD program, and he goes, is that what you envisioned? I said, yes. He goes, okay, we'll do that. So that's how the Master 300 came about. But
you're saying 2 of those because they're tubes, right?
Well, I would say you could do one Master 300 or 2 200 IQs would be a good combination. Yeah. The Constellation, any of the products, the Inspiration even would be really good.
Block audio.
Well, block audio would be, I think, when people are getting more into the M3, M6 category, the blocks will be...
Right, but I mean the sweetness of the block audio.
The block has been one of my favorite matches with Magico speakers, but I don't think anyone's going to spend $105,000 on electronics when they're buying, $46,000 speakers, right? Typically. Yeah. So we're trying to keep the budget, parallel.
Balanced,
so the Luxman... The Luxman M10X with the C10X would be really good. Any of the past stuff, the Constellation, like the Inspiration or the Taurus series would be very good.
Well, at the show a couple of years ago, when you had Michael Fremer playing vinyl in your room at the Florida Audio Expo.
Yeah, we actually had the opposite. We had the M6s with 2 Q18s, right?
Yeah.
Q sub 18s. And we had a pair of M900 monoblocks from Luxman.
That sounded great.
It did
that
sound
was
really
a
I heard that
show.
system. I heard that system.
That was a great combination.
That was a great combination. But it just reveals how balanced the Magicos are, and you just pick your flavor. It's like you're picking your toppings. If you want something a little warmer, you go with the Pass. If you want something sweeter, you go with the Luxman. If you want a combination, you go with the Constellation. If you want something neutral, you would go with maybe a Solution, 330 integrated or a 5. What's what's the integrated? The 520? Man, I can't remember all the
And
numbers.
the Magico is so revealing. It's such a good instrument.
Yeah,
that,
it is.
It will tell you what you're feeding it.
Well,
you know?
you and I did some testing in the store when we were having a sort of power cable debate, and we were changing one power cable.
Yes.
And it was on the source, and we were using the Magicos, and you could hear as we changed from, you know, this cable to that cable, and how much more revealing and transparent the system got. So yes, and that was one power cable change. Of course, the cable deniers will say cables don't matter, but whatever.
We did the same thing with Magico when we played a CD versus streaming.
Yes.
And we could hear the difference in that through the Magico. So, I mean, really, Jeff, the Magico, as you know, is about the most revealing, you know, speaker we handle here at Suncoast Audio.
Yeah, definitely.
You know,
it's very, very revealing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
absolutely.
and I think you know there really are a lot of right answers to that question about the S3 and pairing components, and you know, maybe I don't know, 18 months from now we can come back and you can tell me about all the S3 systems that you've set up and
Absolutely.
you know how they varied. I would really be interested in hearing that. I think that would be a real interesting topic.
Absolutely, no problem. And speaking of the S3 pairings, the CAT, the Convergent Audio Technology,
oh my goodness,
amplifiers, we heard them on the on the S3 and the S5 at
in Chicago.
That was fantastic.
It was insane.
Yeah.
It was so good.
Yeah. But anyway, well, Jeff, we greatly appreciate your time today. We could talk all day. We definitely appreciate it. I will see you next week, my friend, in Munich, and good luck and congratulations on your new role.
Well, I really appreciate it. Again, you guys having me on, and Mike, safe travels, and we'll see you soon.
All right. Take care.
Okay.
Thanks, Jeff.
Bye-bye.
All right.